morning, Rabbi.
Morning, good morning.
Ain't back.
All right, this is good. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Shviz Pei Gimel Halacha Aleph. We're learning today Daf Yutes. We left off on Daf Yutes Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the top of the Amud in middle of the Mishnah. The first topic of the Mishnah that we started yesterday was speaking about the topic of removing from one's private property, whether it is from one's home or from one's yard or from one's barn, zevel, to take them into the field. True that we're not allowed to fertilize our fields midrabanan on the Shemitah year, on Shviz, but the person is not taking it out to fertilize. They simply want to make heaps to store the manure on the field for it to be used in the 8th year. And even though the manure is going to get hard, like we learned in the Mishnah, in the subsequent year, when it rains or when a person puts water on it, it will still be usable. Now, why would there be a problem with that? Marasayin, as we'll see clearly in the Gemara, that when a person is going to take zevel into the field, if they don't follow certain guidelines, it will give the appearance that they're bringing it out there to fertilize their fields. So the first thing they have to do, that's what we learned yesterday, is the time when they are not allowed versus the time that they are allowed. And in that we had in the Mishnah 3-way machlokes tanoim. Rabbi Meir says, simple, that you have to look at that region. When people in that region finished fertilizing their fields, going forward, if you are then going to make these dung heaps, no one is going to suspect you. You're not going to give any bad appearance. You're not going to be of a bad influence because people see clearly that it's not the Zman. Rabbi Yehuda uses the words Mishiyavesh Hamasik. I know we read the Marafulda that spoke about the Zevel itself, but from the way we will learn Pshat in the Gemara today, Rabbi Yehuda is speaking about the earth. When the earth becomes dry, Rabbi Yossi says when the earth begins to get nari. These are the 3 opinions that we had. And it's amazing that the Rambam that we learn, we just have to put it together. The Rambam in Perek Sheni, in the laws of Shemitah v'Yovel, like I wanted to see who does he paskin like. The Rambam puts all the 3 opinions together. I'm just going to read the words of the Rambam. The beginning of the Perek. Lo yoitzi adam zvalam mechatzeiroi. Person is not allowed to remove zevel from his chatzir. V'yiten betoich sodeo bashviz. Why? Marasayin. B'pnei shenirem kemizabel sodeo. It looks like he's going to fertilize his field. Why would a person do that? For the field to be better for sowing, which you may not do. Kedei shetehei yafal azriya. However, but if he takes it out and he makes a dung heap, the big piles, mutter. Now, even though you're allowed to make an ashba, listen to the words. Right, the words of Rav Meir, after the time of fertilizing is over, when is that time? Then he goes, Mishe Yekasher, the words of Rabbi Yossi, Hamasik, the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Mishe Yekasher, Hamasik, how great is that? Unbelievable. And actually, I just want to say that in Perish HaMishnayis, the whole different shot in the Mishnah, that there's a certain tzemach, there's a certain sprout that's very bitter. And the Lashon Saginar, they called it Masoik. So when is the time that it's after the Zman of Avodas, when do people finish fertilizing? When this Pri becomes hardened, when a certain product becomes hardened. And it's just amazing that the Rambam links Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yossi together. This is where we left off in the Mishnah. Now there is an additional rule. In other words, aside of putting it out the right time after Zman Avodas Haaretz, what we will see now in the Mishnah is that there is a way how you pile it, both in the quantity of heaps and the amount in each heap. Don't forget, guys, if you have many heaps, it can even look like you're mamash fertilizing the ground. like we mentioned yesterday, when you put a heap of zevel on the ground, the fact is the ground underneath the heap will become fertilized. So if you're going to make 50 heaps, that's more or less you fertilize the field.
All right, why not make a separation between the heap and the ground?
No, you don't have to do that. If you would
No, I'm
have to
saying
do it,
that
it would
way.
be, yeah,
That
but
way, you're not actually fertilizing
well,
anymore.
I have a better idea. Don't take it out. In other words, the Mishnah is
There you
telling
go.
you what you could do. We're giving you at least you don't have to make a separation. Okay, because we're going to see quantity. We're going to see quantity of heaps. We're going to see the amount in each heap. The more in every heap, the better it is. Mitzat the more in every heap, the wider it gets, the more ground it covers. All these details. There's going to be really a machloikes tanoim that the Mishnah doesn't quote, but the Gemara will bring from Abraisa more details about what will begin today's topic of quantity of piles and amount in each pile. And I think the biggest takeaway that we have today, and I'll tell you in honesty, I don't remember learning such a thing at all until now, never, that the Gemara is going to go into the details of Maras Ayin and make a big statement that we learned from our Mishnah. And the words in Chazal is that loy chashu la'oivrim v'shavim mipnei Maras Ayin. Maras Ayin is only something that we have to take into account the locals. If someone locally will see me doing a certain thing, and it's giving an appearance that I'm doing something that's prohibited, they're going to think that the prohibited is permitted. And guys, I want to say something prior to this. Don't confuse maras ayin and chashad. This is something that we keep on repeating every now and then. Chashad means, v'hiyisem nikiyem Hashem Yisrael. Chashad means that I'm not allowed to do something that will make others think that I'm sinning. Don't do that because people will think that I'm a sinner. That's one issue. That's not maras ayin. Maras ayin is that people around me will presume that I'm doing the right thing, not the wrong thing. And if they misunderstand what I'm doing, they're going to think that what I'm doing is mutter because I'm doing it, and they're going to follow suit. I will become a bad influence. Maras ayin means don't become a bad influence. Chashad means don't make people suspect that you are a sinner. These are two very different things. And when will people look at me and be influenced by me? Only the local people. So we're gonna. It's mamash. This will. I'll repeat this when we learn the Gemara inside. If a person who does not live locally will see me doing something, even though it could give the appearance that I'm doing something that's not okay, we don't care about the oivrim v'shavim. We only care about the local people that know me, as we'll see in the Gemara. That will be the big thing that we'll learn today. Whether this is whether we paskin this way or not, I have no idea. I don't remember hearing such a concept. Maybe Shvi'is Midrabanan is different. I don't know. Now, okay. That's the whole thing that we're learning the Mishnah. On the one hand, the Mishnah, is quoting halachas from the times of the Beis Hamikdash. On the other hand, when the Mishnah was compiled, when the Gemara was written, let's go with the approach that Shemitah B'chal is only Midrabanan. And that might change certain leniencies that maybe we only find by Shvi'is and we don't find in other areas. I'm just speaking about this concept of Maras Ayin. Okay. So
didn't we learn that Maras Ayin, even B'chadri Chadorim?
Yeah, that's something else, but that's not a contradiction. No, it's if what I'm doing over here, I'm gonna bring back what the Gabbai says, and it doesn't contradict at all. Even though in Kalayim, just to make it clear, I think it was 10. The Gemara brought 10 works of Tanoim that contradicted Rav. And the Gemara did not answer. We didn't far'en for Rav. In the Bavli, we justified Rav. We explain why it doesn't contradict. It seems like from the Yerushalmi that we don't accept Rav's umbrella. Once there is Maras Ayin, it's everywhere. Maybe there's a Machlokas Bavli Yerushalmi, which is very foundational when it comes to Maras Ayin. Okay, so aside of this man, Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Yosi, we see that Rambam made them into one opinion. Now, Daf Yutes, 2 lines from the top. The heating is on because someone fertilized just the Hashgacha Pratis, a big commercial for I don't know what's your company's name? Dedicating the class to Yakir's company. They came here last night and they put not the Zevel, they put something against all of the rodents, the Klipos, and the Sitra Achra that they're yoinik from Kedusha. There was a lot of ants in davening yesterday. So there's a very geshmaka odor, but if I pass out in middle, you know why. Anyways, the window is opened and the heating is going into Sfreilachta. Now, at Kama Mizablin. Now, how many heap piles can you make? There has to be a limit. Why does there have to be a limit? Because, Vlad, if I'm going to put in a little area 10 heap piles, I fertilized. Oh, so there's two things. Ad shalosh ashpatois lebeisa. So we keep on going to the Beisa, which was probably a standard size piece of land, 2,500 square amas. 2,500 square amas, Vlad, how much is that? 1.2. It's a little lot. It's a lot west of La Cienega. Oh, Vlad needs a coffee. Normally he's very quick. No, how much is it? It's 37.50, right? Yeah, 37.50. Small lot. Not the balabata shalats. Okay. Anyways, it was a standard lot that you can make 3 heap piles in every Beisa. But here's another thing. You have to have the way we're learning the Mishnah. We'll see in the Gemara perhaps another pshat, and then it's going to come back to this. If the heap is not tall enough, again, it doesn't look good. It looks like you're fertilizing that place. So every heap has to have shal esed mashpelos. A mashpel was a unique or a special type of basket that had openings on all the sides. They were used also to move around manure. So there was a standard size mashpel, and every heap has to have 10 mashpelos. And the Mishnah Noch says that how much fits in every mashpel. V'shal lesach. Lesach is a half a koir. Lesach is 15 sa'ah. That's a quantity amount. So it's 10 lesachs, or just say 10 mashpels. So you have to, again, 3 in a beisa, and everyone should have 10 these containers. Now, moisifen ala mashpelos, if you want to make every pile bigger, the Tanakama says you could, adarabba, you could, because the bigger the pile, the more it's evident it's just a storage. Now, the other side of that is, the bigger the pile, we'll see that in the Gemara, the wider it gets, which we don't want, ideally. But it doesn't matter. The Tanakama holds you can make every pile even bigger than the minimum amount. But what you cannot do, according to the Tanakama, is the ein moisifin alu ashpatois. You can't add more than 3 to every beisa. That is something that you can't do. Again, why? Because if you're going to make 4 or more, it's going to look like you're fertilizing the field and you're trying to cover it up. I'm storage. Yeah, shkoyach, but it's fertilizing the ground underneath it. Now, Rab Shimon is more lenient. Rab Shimon holds, not only are you allowed to add to the minimum of the 10 mashpelos per pile, but if you have such a big pile of 10 or more, it's clearly not fertilizing the field. It's just a storage. Af alo ashpatos, you can add to the number. In other words, as long as everyone has at least these 10 lesachs, that size makes it clear it's a pile of storage and not the fertilizing, then Rab Shimon holds there's no maximum amount of piles. Okay. There's zikr no minimum amount. We're saying up to 3. Okay, now let's begin to the first part of the Mishnah. Before we spoke about the quantity of the piles, we spoke about from what time? And Rab Meir, according to our Girsa, says, which means, or the Gemara is pointing out, what about prior to the time where the people in that neighborhood, let's go, we're speaking about goyim, people that are allowed to work. Prior to that time, when you're not allowed to take the fertilizer in the fields, can you at least move it from inside your house or from inside the yard to the end of your chutzner? I can't bring it into the field, but can I move it as to the edge of my chutzner? Mahu sheyehi mutalasis ashpa al pesach chatzeroi, inside your chutzner. Your chutzner goes into the field. Other, why not? Why not? You're not taking it into the field. Other, no. People are going to say, why are you bringing it all the way to the door? because you're going to take it out to the field to fertilize. Or you're moving it out of your chutzner. Guys, don't forget, it's a health hazard. People don't want to have manure in the middle of the chutzner. They want to be able to use their chutzner. At least let me use my chutzner. That's the question. So says the Gemara, and this is the agadata that we have. It's a typical agadata that stories to answer shilas and shuvas. Happens to be that when they put together the Talmud Yerushalmi, we had two opposite versions of what was the psak din. And what do you do with that? So Silnei, that's the name of a person. He asked exactly this question to Rabbi Barva, which we know is Rabbi Baraba, and according to one version, va'asarli. No, because marasayin. However, Rabbi Chanina Amar, you got the story wrong. That what really Silnei asked the question, and Rabbi actually shiralei. He told him he's allowed to do it. Now we're going to continue to learn the story according to the version of Rabbi Chanina. And this is Gavaldik. Now, I just want to give a little bit of a hegdim that Rabbi Barva, sometimes it's Vav Aleph, sometimes Ba Beis Aleph. We call it in the Bavli Rabbi Bar Abba. Rabbi Bar Abba was a kohen. Step number one. Step number two, that Maisris, that's an interesting topic that comes up every now and then. For sure, when we built the second Beis Hamikdash in that first generation, because of the bear any Levium coming up with Ezra to resettle, he was so upset with the Levium that he penalized the Levium that Meiser Rishon should no longer go to the Levium. It should go to the Kohanim. Predicated that even before the Knas, since Kohanim are Bnei Levi, aside of them being Kohanim, and they are the only recipients for Truma, Meisnes could always go to a Kohen. And then there was a Knas that it should only go to a Kohen. Then we had a whole machloikis in the Bavli, whether that Knas was only for that generation, or whether that Knas was throughout. And by the way, if you remember, we just learned here in Shvius a couple of dafim ago, right? We learned this whole question that whenever something is done for a knas, do you kansa him and his children? Remember that? Right? You plant it on shviz or something, shmita. So we penalize him. You have to be oikeret. And if you weren't oikeret, and the person passed away, do we force his children to uproot it? And we learned a shtickle Gemara Bavli also. Every now, like a person is not allowed to sell his Evet Kanani to a goy, because the Evet Kanani is chayv in the mitzvahs, like women. And if he did it, you penalize him, you have to buy him back, even paying 10 times the amount. So the Gemara wants to know, do you penalize him, and what about his children? So this machloikas, did they penalize the Levium or also the Levium descendants, is probably linked to it. Because if you cannot give a knas to someone's descendants, then the knas of Ezra didn't go on the descendants. Oh, stop, a nice thought. But anyways, coming back over here, whether they consent for throughout Bayesheni or not, people used to give Meiser also to Kohanim. Just a fact. I just want to explain what happened. Rabbi Bar Abba was a Kohen, and he was the recipient of the Meiseres of Silni. Now, he gave him a heter. What happens when the Rav gives a heter to a congregant? What's the suspicion? Shkoyach. The congregant is giving nice donations. Versteis? So he's giving him a tedim. They right away were moitzi lazanim. Says, you're allowed to do that? You know why? Because do nesav meiser. Since Silni gives meiser to Rabbi Bar Abba, he wants to facilitate his life. You know, he's already, he allowed him to take the fertilizer all the way to the door. Like this, he'll be able to, he's already a step ahead. So there's going to be more produce. And there'll be more produce, he's going to get more meiser. So they spun it in a way, they were critical of him, that you're being lenient because you are the beneficiary of your heter. And now, once that was said, he wanted to get out of that suspicion. So what did he do? So he ruled for himself. He said himself, I'm going to go l'chutz la'aretz that next year, on the 8th year. Not b'chlal to be in Eretz Yisrael. In order for him not to receive the meiser from the produce that Taka somehow benefited from the fact that the manure was moved. The loy l'meis of meiser, not to have to receive the meiser. What a great story. Many things can be learned from it. One thing you can clearly see, why did he have to go to Chutz La'aretz? Just don't accept the Meiser. From here you see that if someone offers Meiser to a Kohen or to a Levi, it's not respectful to the Meiser not to receive it. When a person gives a donation to the shul, it's not respectful not to receive it. Then he's laughing. No, it's an interesting thing. It's not a personal thing. Sometimes you say, from you, I don't want help. That's an ego thing. It's not about you. It's not about you. So the only way he got the solution for him was to go to Chutz La'aretz. And here the caution that a Rav has to have, not to appear to be on the Ge'ah B'David. Because maybe that's another message. What Rabbi Chia Bar Va could have told him, that I am not qualified to answer the question because I'm in a Ge'ah B'David. And there was some benefit by allowing easier maneuvering of the manure. It's not just that he made it easier. I think that ultimately caused for there to be more produce on the 8th year.
He was the only coin in Eretz Yisrael?
No, but he was Rabbi Chia Bar Abba was the one that Silni always gave the Meiser to. I just added the coin because we already learned he was a coin. But don't worry, Kohanim could get Meiser Rishon, and maybe they dafka got it after some point. The Levium stopped getting it. If Ezra's Kanas goes forever or goes for I don't know until when, it was common that Kohanim got Meiser Rishon. And Truma Gedoyla. Abada. Okay. Now, so first of all, can you move it to the door? Machloek is in the gears of what happened. And Mestama, the Gemara is authenticating Rab Chanina's version because there's a story on top of the story that only fits if he was mated to him. Okay. Now, so it's all about Marasai. So hold on. Even after the time when the people in that region finished fertilizing, it should still be usher. Why is that? Because there is still marasayin. And now let's go back to all of these new concepts that we are learning about. For us, it's just a concept. There's a Beis Habal and a Beis Hashalchin or Beis Hashalachim. And if you remember, we learned the Rambam by Rabbi Evan Yisrael's Rambam, and he had in the Rambam Beis Shalahin, saying he had a different way he had a hey, not a ches. Remember that the whole time? Beis Shalahin, however you pronounce it. There are fields that survive on rain, and there are fields that whether it's the location, whether it's the item that you plant there's a field that the balabas puts in there. However, they used to put then a certain type of human irrigation system, and those fields, because of them being irrigated b'koyach adam, they were used a lot more. Let's speak about fertilizing it. If I rely on the rainwaters, so there's a rain season in the Holy Land, and I will plant at a specific time. After that time, there's no point planting. So there is a time of fertilizing. If you own a Beis Shalachin, let's go pronouncing it that way, you would fertilize your field throughout the whole year. No one knew when you're going to fertilize your field. Whenever it is that you're deciding to plant, you knew what water to put when, and you knew when to fertilize it. So the Gemara doesn't understand. If you have a Beis Habal, the Beis Habal fields have a set time of them being fertilized, and after that time, the Rab Meir, there's no marasayin. But maybe you have a Beis Shalachin, and if you have a Beis Shalachin, then you would fertilize it even after the other time. That's the kasha. You should never be able to do it for observers not to say and a Beis Shalachin field was actually fertilized all year long. This is a bomb question. There's always marasayin. And here's the Gemara's answer. I'm telling you guys, it's worth it for every line. This is a big thing, at least for me. I don't remember this. Marasayin? No. That marasayin is only for the locals. I'm only concerned of marasayin from the people that live in the city. And people who live in the city, they know what I own. If the owner has a Beis Shalachin, you're right, then he will never be allowed to make not a single dung heap throughout the Shvi'is year. You can't do that. We're speaking about a person who doesn't own a Beis Shalachin. Everyone knows if you own it or not. So there's no maras ayin for that individual. And Omar Rabbi Yossi, from this answer that we have in the Yerushalmi, says that Amoyra Rabbi Yossi, Hada Omra, this teaches you that loichashu lo oivrim v'shavim epnei maras ha'ayin. Only people of one city who knows your state of affairs, for them there's a maras ayin issue. And I'll tell you why. It makes a lot of sense. If the issue is chshad, in my understanding, then who cares? Who cares who is looking at you? Behave in a way that when people look at you, they don't suspect you of being a avariyan. But if the issue is I don't want to be a bad influence, I will never be a bad influence on people that don't even know me. If they don't live in the city, just because they see me, let's say they think I'm violating, so what? I won't influence them. I'll influence my bnei ha'ir. That's maras ayin means don't be a bad influence. So I look at people. No one is perfect, but I look up, I know this person is good in this area. And if they're going to do something that I'll misunderstand what they're doing something allowed, but I think they're doing something asur, I will say, if they're doing it, it's mutter. And I'm going to do it. That's only l'bnei irai. I cannot fully understand it. I won't be influenced by people that I don't know. I am influenced by people that I already look up to, and they do it. You say what they're doing is allowed, but then you misunderstand what they're doing. So the kid said, there's no maras ayin concern only for people that know you well. Bnei Ira isn't stam Bnei Ira just because you live in LA. Bnei Ira means the guy who knows what fields you own and what fields you don't own. It means for your chevra, it's amongst your chevra maras ayin. That's the issue of maras ayin, not for strangers, not for avim v'shavim.
It's a shtetl kind of lifestyle.
One second, yeah.
Wouldn't your chevra know when you're moving this file to the edge of your yard that that's what it is? It's not for fertilizer, it's just to remove the zevel from your yard.
Okay, let me just say to Vlad, if I'm going to move, I'm going back to that. If I move the zevel to the edge of my yard, one of the reasons why a person will do it, one of the reasons that would motivate a person to do it is because the moment I'm allowed to fertilize, it's already there. So it's an act of pre-fertilization, which is awesome. Yeah, Yakir. If you have a better answer, Vlad, you'll share it with me. Weiter. And now let's go back to what we learned in the beginning of the Masechta. So what did we learn? And it's interesting that Rambam links the Isur, Midrabanan, of fertilizing, the Rambam links it to plowing, which was the topic of the first two chapters. And what did we learn? That aside of the prohibition of plowing on the Shvi is here, there is what we call Isur Shnei Perakim. This is going back when it was Asur Midai Raisa, Toisefa Shvis to plow. That's the way we were learning the Sugya. 30 days before. The Chachamim went ahead and they were Mesakin. It's not only 30 days, it's way before. Based on that, if you can't plow either from Pesach or from Shavuos, and fertilizing is plowing, so then you cannot fertilize from that time. But now the question is, this guy is not fertilizing. He's making a heap pile. Maras ayin. Are we going to extend the problem of maras ayin during the time of Isur Shnei Perakim? Is it at kedei kach? Fragt die Gemara be Isur Shnei Perakim during the pre-Shvius time. Ma'u sheyemuta lasis keseder hazeh. Will we at least say that even though this is the word? Guys, even during Shvius, we learned in the Mishnah two things. It has to be after the fertilizing Zman and certain amount of size that we'll get back to in a moment. If both of these conditions are met, of course you will be allowed to do it Isur Shnei Perakim, because pre-Shvius cannot be worse than Shvius. Problem is that from Shavuos until Rosh Hashanah, by Orchard, the first chapter, second chapter of Shvius, from Pesach until Rosh Hashanah. During that time, it's not after the fertilizing time. It's not after the fertilizing time. What did we learn so much in the just recently? That certain legumes were planted at the end of the year. They were planted at the end of the year. So it's not post-fertilizing time. The Gemara is also not saying that you should be allowed to fertilize. But this concept of you're making 3 piles and every pile is very big. Maybe that alone is enough. That's the Gemara's kasha. It's on the Shvi'is year, you have to have both what we learned yesterday at the beginning of the Mishnah and today. It has to be after fertilizing time and big heaps. Maybe during the Isra of Shnei Perakim, as long as you have the 3 piles and every pile has in it 10 containers, big piles, that in itself lends the observer to say, it's only storage. Even though it's not post-fertilizing time, maybe it should be permitted. You got it? Gavaldik. For this, the Gemara answers, I will know. Kevin, do you stop it with your pictures? Ganuk. It's much better to learn this without pictures. Nishma'inam min adam. So
But
thank you very much, Kevin.
Yeah, we love you, Kevin. Okay, good. Nishma'inam min adam. The Gemara is too easy. That's why he has time. You have to make it harder. Everyone to be thinking. Moichrin u'maitzin zvalim im ha'oisim shvi'is. The Braisa is speaking about someone who is either he is working with a Jew during pre-Shvi'is area, but it's a Jew that sadly is not yet observant on Shvi'is. So the Braisa says you are allowed to sell fertilizer, even to a Jew that so far is not yet so observant in Shvi'is. You can sell it to him pre-Shvi'is. You can schlep the zevel for him pre-Shvi'is, even though this guy works on Shvi'is, Ad Rosh Hashanah, or even more. If you are doing business with a goy or with a kuti, which at the time the Braisa was written, we consider him like a goy who was not keeping Shvi'is, you are allowed to not only sell, but you can even schlep the zevel to his field on the Shvi'is year with one condition. There's one point after which that you can't do. And what is that? You cannot unload the zevel from the mashpel onto the field. You can deliver, but you can't unload. So again, Chevra, we're speaking about 2 things. Either you're working with another Jew who is not keeping Shvi'is, but you're working with him pre-Shvi'is, or with a goy or a kuti on the Shvi'is here. You can schlep the zevel. You're a zevel seller. You can sell it. You can actually transport it, but you can't put it on the field. Why? I'll tell you why. Even on a heap. Because, guys, the owner of the field, the Jew, pre-Shvi'is, the goy, if they have in mind when you unload it, if they have in mind for that area underneath it to be fertilized, that kavana means that you're fertilizing it. Oh, so now that's the end of the brais. So what's the raya? How does it resolve our question? Is a raya that lo yomar ella ubulvad shelo yifrek esamashpelis. The red line is don't unload it on the field, which means but you can take it all the way to the field. You can take it all the way to the field. Now, listen to the Gemara's logic. Let me say it by heart. If the Isur Anayid regarding pre-Shvi'is would be to make these piles, why would it be Usur? Even if you make only 3 big piles, because it's not after the fertilizing time. If it would be prohibited, I, a Jew, would not be allowed even to take it to the field. Do you know what that is called? It's called being a misayeya lo oivrei aveda. I'm not going to call it lifnei iver lesitin michshol. That's another good thing to chazer. Lifnei iver lesitin michshol only applies if the person who's violating can only violate because of me. The lashon hatoisvis that, let's say there's a person that le'es ata is eating, God forbid, treif, and on his side of the river there is no treif of meat. I am transporting the treif to him, that if I would not transport it, he would not have it. 2 sides of the river. That's the words of the Tosfos. That's called lifnei iver l'sitim echshol. Now, if this person has access to McDonald's on his side of the river, and I, God forbid, sell to him treif, I'm not called lifnei iver l'sitim echshol because he would eat treif anyway. But I am called being a misayeya lo oivrei aved. If this person would not be allowed to make a dung heap on any way I don't know if he's going to make 3 piles. This guy is not keeping, but he could make 3 piles. Then I can take it to the field. I can't unload it because if his mind is to fertilize, then I'm a shliach. I'm fertilizing. That I can't do. If I'm unloading it, if I'm not unloading it, I'm allowed to give it to him because he's allowed to himself make the piles. If he were to want to do it in a way that it's mutter. That's the Gemara's logic. Because if there would never be a permit, why would there not be a permit? Because it's not post-fertilizing time. It would not even be allowed to take it to the field. And the words of I'm being a misayeh I have over here in the Pnei Moshe. He uses these words. Okay. We're learning big topics today. Now, the continuation of Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yehuda says, Misha Yivash HaMosek. I know we read the Marafulda. Again, it appears from the Gemara that we're speaking about the ground. The ground. I know we just quoted from the Perush HaMishnayos. We're speaking about a product that's sweet. He calls the ground sweet. Stam, it's a one of the words we give to Mother Earth, sweet, and Yivash Hamasik means that when are you allowed to remove the fertilizer? Before we get into the quantity of piles of Vechule, it's when the ground dries up. So the Gemara says, what ground are we talking about? And how do you define drying up? There's dry and there's dry. So first of all, the dried up of Rabbi Yehuda refers to pakua. Pakua means that cracks begin to appear on the land. Cracks appear when there's less moisture. More moisture, what did we learn yesterday? You make a hole in a product. If it's moist, it somehow closes. So cracks. Amar Abmana, another detail. That what land are we talking about? Hahon Pakua from the Bika, the Bikata. Now the valley, which is lowlands, they get most of the water because the water flows down. So the earth on the hills or on highlands, they dry earlier. It's a chumrah. It's not enough for your land to dry up. It has to be after the zman that even the lands in the bika already are beginning to form cracks. Because once the land in the valleys have these cracks, fertilizing in no area is going to be effective, parenthetically, on non-irrigated fields, like we just learned a few lines ago. The Beis HaShlachin, fertilizing will be effective the whole time around because those lands never become dry because you will water it before you begin the process. That is Rabbi Yehuda. Comes along Rabbi Yossi and he says, Mishi Yakashin. From when the ground, the ground is becoming nutty. So first of all, what does it mean, Mishi Yakashin? Mishi Asa, Kishrin. We're speaking about that there are many knots, lumps that form in the ground. That looks like clay. Now, we're not farmers. So, Amar, Rabbi, Chananya, another detail, we'll get to it in a moment, that we're not talking about, there's the surface of the ground, there is deeper down in the ground. The knotting up is also a siman, Vlad, that it's getting dried out. But the more moist, the more muddy. But does it have to even go under the ground? No. Amar, Rabbi, Chananya, Mikiven, Sheneskasher, Boy Kesher, Elyon. Even when it's only the top layer of the surface of the ground that's becoming dried out, thus nari, miyadu yavesh, it's considered already dried. I want you to know, says the Gemara, V'tani Allah, we learned regarding this, we learned further in the Braisa regarding this machlokes in the Mishnah, even though we have Rabbi Yehuda and we have Rabbi Yossi, and let's go for sure that Rambam learned this also going on Rabbi Meir because he puts it all together, that Kroivim Divreim Liyoshavim, also wissen sein, that it's not such a big machlokes in time. Actually, the very Kroivim, it's basically the same. It's basically the same. The time of fertilizing, when do people stop fertilizing? When there are cracks, and the cracks and the knotting are very much connected one to the other. Now I want to say something in addition, that if Rabbi Hananya, if without Rabbi Hananya's clarification that the knotting is only on the surface, think about it. Where do you see cracks on the ground? Only on the surface. If the knotting would be even underneath knotting, then Rabbi Yossi's shade would be even later, because a crack and a knot is the same thing. When they begin to make clumps, and here I have another clump, in between there'll be a crack. But if you have to have it even underground, then the lumping of the lower layers of the ground happens after there are cracks on the surface. So actually, this Braisa is also a raya to Rabbi Hanania. Now that he says it's only the top layer, Taka, so now it comes out that Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda are the same. And again, the Rambam for sure learned all three are the same because the Rambam puts them all together. Okay, Atkan, let's go weiter. Now, what did we have in the Mishnah? What we started today with was not only do you have to wait for that time to pass, the time of fertilizing is over. In addition to that, the Tanakama holds, everyone holds, you can only make 3 on an area of a besa. Every one of the 3 has to have the amount of 10 containers. What happens if you have more zevel? So the Tanakama says, don't make more piles, but you can add to each pile. These were the words of the Tanakama. Moisifan ala mashpelis. Okay. And Abshimon, we said, is so lenient that you can even add more piles. That was the machlokes. So Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, guys, havamina maskana, havamina, that when this is a very we're going to refute this. When did the Tanakama say you can never add more than 3? That's only if you don't have 10 in the ones that you are adding. The moment every heap has 10 mashpelos or more, even the Tanakama says you can add. But that would imply that Rab Shimon, who allows you to add, would allow you to add even if it doesn't have 10 mashpelos, and that's not correct. So that we're going to refute this. So Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, when does the Tanakama ask her to add? That's only bepoiches min hamashpelos. But if you have 40 lesechs, you can make four piles because each one will have 10, right? But that can't be, asks the Gemara, because what does that imply? That would imply that the 3 that you could do is even if it's less. That's not true. But hasholish mutir, but that can't be. Rabbi Yossi boy, if you're speaking about less, you can't add if it's less than 10, but the 3 can be less than 10. It's befedish otherwise. It's not true. The Tanakama stated explicitly, that was the beginning, that everyone has to have 10 mashpelos before he mentioned adding. That's not the right pshat. What is the right pshat? Ella ki nan kaimin. What is the Tanakama talking about? The Tanakama who says that you can add to every heap as many mashpelos as you want. 10, 20, 50. What you cannot do is add more heaps. Yeah. You cannot even add a heap if it's going to be 10. But oisa min kishir, even that is not allowed. And I'll prove it to you, says the Gemara, that is the right pshat in the Mishnah, in the Tanakama. Kahada the Tani, and the raya to the pshat in the Mishnah, which is correct, is from the following Braisa, that ein moisifin. Now we're going to have a new sheet. See, in the Mishnah, we didn't have this opinion. Ein moisifin loyal mashpelis loyal ashpatos. Rabbi Meir is very machmir. Rabbi Meir says, not only like the Tanakama, you can't add more than 3 piles. Rav Meir holds you cannot add more than 10 containers to every pile. And the logic, why would that be? Because the taller the pile, the wider it gets, and the more area it covers. And at some point, you're saying you're fertilizing the ground. The Chachamim say, now the Chachamim here is the Tanakama of our Mishnah. Turning to the Avchaf on the top, Moisifin ala mashpelos, you could add. The only thing is, so now that you have a contrast, the Chachamim and Rav Meir, now you'll know pshat in the Chachamim, which is our Tanakama. When the sages who argue with Rabbi Meir and they say you can add loy bikashir, of course bikashir. In other words, the Chachamim don't mean to allow the increase in size only if you decrease the number of heaps. No, that the Chachamim who are saying that moisifin ala mashpelos ve'ein moisifin ala shpatois, moisifin ala mashpelos means you can add to more than 10. Ve'ein moisifin ala shpatois means even if you're adding 10 or more. Even if you're adding 10 or more, afilu b'kashir, you can't add more than 3. Clearly, the way we're learning. In other words, the Chachamim, the Tanakama in Mishnah says, Every heap has to have 10. You can't add more than 3. Even if what you are adding has 10 or more, you cannot add because it's too many piles in a Beisa. Rab Shimon is the one that's lenient and that says that as long as every pile has 10 lesechs, everyone knows it's a storage, and you can add as many as you want.
So according to the mayor, you
Pile
can't
as you want.
have more than 10 lesechs in the pile, and you can't have less than 10 lesechs. It has to be exactly 10.
Yeah, that's also a question.
Yeah, the mayor holds you can. The way you store it is you have to make 3 piles in a Beisa, and every pile has to have 10. Every pile has to have 10.
Meaning, and if it's 9, it's not good because
The Braisa
it-
does not explicitly speak about that. What the Braisa does say is that you cannot add to any pile. Not only can you not add to the 3, the Braisa doesn't address this directly. Not only can you not add piles, you can't add to each pile because 10 takes a certain width, and when you add, the disadvantage is that you're broadening the area.
Shkoyach.
End of the day, we cannot have more than
30,
piles
very good.
and
Yeah.